The massive transport ship descended through the atmosphere of Nexus Prime, its hull gleaming like polished silver against the orange sky. Inside the luxury passenger section, Princess Zara Thiel of the Velnari Empire sat perfectly still, her long fingers folded in her lap. Her skin had a faint blue tint that marked her royal bloodline, and her silver eyes showed no emotion as she watched the planet grow larger through the viewport. "Your Highness," said Commander Veltar, her personal guard, "are you certain about attending this academy? The Galactic Diplomatic Academy accepts many lesser species." Zara Thiel's expression remained calm. "The Empire needs allies, Commander. Even my father agrees that our old ways of diplomacy are not working as well as they once did." What she did not say was that she had practically begged her father, Emperor Xanthiel, to let her attend. The Velnari court was suffocating her with endless ceremonies and marriage proposals from boring nobles. At least at the academy, she might learn something useful. The ship landed at the academy's spaceport with barely a sound. Zara Thiel stepped out into the strange air of Nexus Prime, breathing in scents she had never experienced. The planet was neutral territory, chosen specifically because no single species could claim it as their homeland. The Galactic Diplomatic Academy rose before her like a crystal mountain. Students from dozens of species walked across the campus grounds. She saw the tall, thin Zephyrians with their feathered crests, the rock-like granite people who moved slowly but surely, and many others she recognized from her royal education. Then she saw him. A young human male sat under a strange purple tree, reading from a data pad. His brown hair was messy, and he wore the simple gray uniform that all academy students received. What caught her attention was not his appearance, but the fact that he seemed completely relaxed. Most beings were either nervous about starting at the academy or trying to look important. This human just looked comfortable. "Princess Zara Thiel of the Velnari Empire," announced a mechanical voice as she approached the main building. "Please report to Administration Hall for orientation and partner assignment." Inside the building, she found herself in a large room with about 50 other new students. At the front stood Dean Korthax, an elderly Talarian whose blue skin was marked with the wisdom scars of his people. "Welcome, future diplomats," Dean Korthax said, his voice carrying easily through the room. "You are here to learn not just the rules of galactic law, but how to build bridges between species that have never understood each other. To do this, you will be paired with a partner from a different species for the entire year." Zara Thiel felt her stomach tighten. She had hoped to be paired with someone from a respected species, perhaps a Talarian or even a Zephyrian. Someone who would understand proper protocol and royal dignity. "Your partner assignments are based on our careful analysis of personality types and learning styles," the dean continued. "We believe these pairings will challenge you in ways that will make you better diplomats." A holographic list appeared in the air above them. Zara Thiel searched for her name, and when she found it, her silver eyes widened in shock. Princess Zara Thiel of Velnar, Marcus Chen of Earth. A human. They had paired the crown princess of one of the oldest empires in the galaxy with a human from a species that had only discovered faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. The Velnari had been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years. She looked around the room and spotted the same human she had seen under the tree. He was looking at the list too, and when their eyes met, he raised his hand in what she assumed was a human greeting gesture. She did not respond. After the orientation, she found herself standing across from Marcus Chen in a small meeting room. Up close, she could see that his brown eyes held intelligence. But that did not change the fact that he was from a species her people considered barely civilized. "So," Marcus said, settling into his chair with that same casual comfort she had noticed outside. I guess we're partners. I have to admit, I'm pretty surprised they paired me with actual royalty. As am I, Zarathiel replied stiffly, though I suspect this assignment was not made with serious consideration. Marcus tilted, his head slightly. What makes you say that? Your species has been part of galactic civilization for barely 2 centuries. The Velnari Empire has been a major power for over 100 times longer. Surely you can see why this pairing seems unusual. To her surprise, Marcus smiled. It was not a mocking smile, but something warmer. You know, where I come from, we have a saying, don't judge a book by its cover. Maybe they paired us together because we might actually learn something from each other. What could I possibly learn from a human? The words came out sharper than she intended. Marcus was quiet for a moment, and she wondered if she had hurt his feelings. But when he spoke again, his voice was still friendly. I don't know yet, but I'm willing to find out if you are. Before she could respond, their first instructor arrived. Professor Yildena was a Zephyrian with bright golden feathers that rustled when she moved. Ah, our famous pairing, Professor Yildena said, her voice carrying the musical quality, typical of her species. Princess Zarathiel and Marcus Chen, the entire faculty is quite curious to see how this partnership develops. Zarathiel felt heat rise in her cheeks, though her blue skin did not show it the way human skin would. Curious? Why? Well, the professor said, settling her feathers more comfortably. It is not often we pair someone from such an ancient, traditional culture with someone from such a dynamic and unpredictable species. Dynamic and unpredictable, Marcus repeated. I think that might be the nicest way anyone has ever called humans chaotic. Professor Yildena made a sound that might have been laughter. Your first assignment is to spend the next week learning about each other's cultures, not the official histories, but the real cultures, how your people actually live, what they value, what makes them happy or sad. You will present your findings to the class next week. After the professor left, Zarathiel and Marcus sat in awkward silence. So, Marcus said finally, how do you want to do this? Should I tell you about human culture first, or would you prefer to start with Velnari customs? Zarathiel considered this. Every instinct told her to maintain proper distance and formality, but something about Marcus's genuine curiosity made her pause. Perhaps, she said slowly, you could tell me what you already know about the Velnari. That way I can correct any misunderstandings. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Honestly, I know you're one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations, your empire covers about 40 star systems, and your diplomatic style tends to be pretty formal. But that's just the official stuff. I don't know anything about what it's actually like to be Velnari. Despite herself, Zarathiel found his honesty refreshing. In her own court, everyone pretended to know everything about everything. Very well, she said. I will tell you about my people, but I expect the same honesty about yours. Marcus smiled again. Deal. As they began to talk, neither of them realized that this simple conversation was the first step in a journey that would change not just their own lives, but the future of galactic civilization itself. 3 months had passed since Princess Zarathiel and Marcus Chen first met at the Galactic Diplomatic Academy. What had started as an awkward partnership was slowly becoming something neither of them had expected. No, you're doing it all. Wrong, Zarathiel said, watching Marcus attempt a traditional Velnari greeting. They sat in the Academy's garden, surrounded by plants from a dozen different worlds. Your hand position shows disrespect to someone of higher rank. Marcus tried again, carefully positioning his fingers the way she had shown him. Like this? Better, she admitted. Though your timing is still off, the bow should come exactly 2 seconds after the hand gesture. 2 seconds exactly? Marcus asked, raising an eyebrow. What happens if it's 3 seconds? You would be suggesting that the person you're greeting is not worthy of prompt respect. Marcus shook his head in amazement. Your people have rules for everything, don't they? Rules create order, Zarathiel replied automatically. It was something she had been taught since childhood. Order creates peace. But what about flexibility? Marcus asked. What happens when you meet someone whose culture has completely different rules? Zarathiel paused. It was a question she had never really considered. In Velnari society, other species were expected to follow Velnari protocol when dealing with the Empire. I suppose they learn our ways, she said, though the words felt uncertain in her mouth. Marcus pulled out his datapad and showed her a recording from their diplomatic simulation class earlier that week. In the recording, Zarathiel was trying to negotiate with a holographic granite person, one of the rock-like species known for their blunt communication style. Watch how you approach this, Marcus said, pointing to the screen. On the recording, Zarathiel went through the full formal greeting ritual, speaking in the flowery language that Velnari diplomacy required. The granite person's response was a single word, no. You spent 5 minutes on greetings, Marcus observed, but granite people see elaborate greetings as a waste of time. They think you were being disrespectful by not getting to the point. Zarathiel watched herself in the recording, seeing how her careful politeness had actually made the situation worse. But the proper forms must be observed, she said weakly. Says who? Marcus asked gently. What if the proper form is whatever? Actually helps people understand each other? She stared at him. The idea was so simple yet so revolutionary to her way of thinking. That's not how diplomacy works, isn't it? Marcus pulled up another recording. This one from a simulation he had handled with a group of emotional Zephyrians. Instead of following any formal protocol, he had simply sat down with them and listened to their concerns. Within minutes, they were all talking freely, and by the end of the session, they had reached an agreement that satisfied everyone. How did you know to do that? Zarathiel asked. Marcus shrugged. I grew up on a farming world. When your crops are dying and your neighbor has the only working water pump, you don't waste time with fancy speeches. You figure out what they need and find a way to help each other. But surely there must be proper procedures, even on your world. There are, Marcus agreed. But the procedures exist to help people, not the other way around. If a rule doesn't help, we change it. Zarathiel felt something shift in her understanding. She had been taught that rules were sacred, unchangeable things handed down from the wise ancestors. The idea that they could be changed to fit new situations was both terrifying and exciting. Over the following weeks, they began working together on more complex simulations. Professor Yildena had assigned them a particularly difficult scenario, mediating a trade dispute between the emotional Zephyrians and the logical Talarians. This should be impossible, Zarathiel said, reading through the background materials. Zephyrians make decisions based on feelings and group harmony. Talarians use pure logic and individual analysis. They approach problems in completely opposite ways. Maybe that's exactly why they need each other, Marcus suggested. What do you mean? Marcus leaned back in his chair, getting that thoughtful expression she had learned to recognize. Think about it. The Zephyrians are great at understanding what everyone wants and needs. The Talarians are great at figuring out practical solutions. What if we help them see that their differences are actually strengths? But how? They can barely communicate without arguing. Well, Marcus said with a smile, what if we don't try to make them communicate the same way? What if we help them communicate better in their own ways? Zarathiel frowned. I don't understand. Let me show you. Marcus activated the simulation, and suddenly they were in a virtual meeting room with holographic representatives from both species. The Zephyrian delegate was clearly agitated, her feathers ruffled and changing colors rapidly. The Talarian, sat perfectly still, speaking in calm, logical sentences that seemed to make the Zephyrian even more upset. Instead of trying to impose formal diplomatic protocol, Marcus did something unexpected. He turned to the Zephyrian first. "I can see this situation is causing you distress," he said simply. "Can you help me understand what your people are feeling right now?" The Zephyrian's feathers settled slightly. She began to speak about her people's fears and concerns, not in diplomatic language, but in the emotional, poetic way that Zephyrians naturally communicated. When she finished, Marcus turned to the Talarian. "You've heard her concerns. From a logical standpoint, what would be the most efficient way to address these issues while still meeting your people's needs?" The Talarian began to analyze the situation methodically, breaking down each concern into practical components and suggesting concrete solutions. "Now," Marcus said to both of them, "do you see any connections between what you both want?" As the two delegates began to find common ground, Zarathiel watched in amazement. Marcus hadn't forced either side to change their communication style. Instead, he had helped them use their natural strengths to understand each other. "How did you know that would work?" she asked after the simulation ended. "I didn't," Marcus admitted. "But I figured it was worth trying. Sometimes the best solution isn't the obvious one." That evening, Zarathiel found herself walking alone through the academy gardens, thinking about everything she had learned. For her entire life, she had been taught that there was one right way to do things, the Velnari way. But Marcus was showing her that there might be many right ways, depending on the situation. It was a disturbing thought. If the Velnari way wasn't always the best way, what did that mean for her empire? What did it mean for her? She found Marcus sitting under the same purple tree where she had first seen him, looking up at the unfamiliar stars of Nexus Prime. "Marcus," she said, sitting down beside him. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Don't you ever worry that you're doing things wrong? That there's a better way you don't know about?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "All the time," he said finally. "But I figured out that being afraid of making mistakes just stops you from trying anything at all. And if you never try, you never learn." Zarathiel looked up at the stars, thinking about her empire's ancient traditions and rigid protocols. For the first time in her life, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, there might be room for something new. "Marcus," she said softly, "I think you might be teaching me something important." He smiled at her, and in that moment she realized that what she was learning had very little to do with diplomacy, and everything to do with seeing the galaxy in a completely different way. The emergency alarm echoed through the halls of the Galactic Diplomatic Academy at 3 in the morning. Princess Zarathiel woke instantly, her royal training making her alert even in sleep. Down the hall, she could hear other students stirring, and confused voices asking what was happening. She quickly dressed in her academy uniform and stepped into the corridor, where she found Marcus already waiting. His hair was messy from sleep, but his eyes were sharp and focused. "Any idea what's going on?" he asked as they joined the stream of students heading toward the main assembly hall. "Nothing good happens when they wake the entire academy at this hour," Zarathiel replied, her voice tight with concern. In the assembly hall, Dean Korthax stood at the podium, his blue Talarian skin looking pale under the emergency lighting. Behind him, several screens showed star maps and what appeared to be military ship positions. "Students," the dean began, his usually calm voice carrying an edge of urgency. "We have received an emergency request from the Galactic Council. A mining dispute in the Kepler 442 system has escalated beyond normal diplomatic channels. Two species, the Rockborn and the Veil Dancers, are on the verge of armed conflict." Murmurs spread through the assembled students. Armed conflict between species was rare in the modern galaxy and usually meant that normal diplomacy had completely failed. "The senior students will be assisting actual diplomatic teams," Dean Korthax continued. "This is not a simulation. lives, and the peace of an entire system depend on the success of these negotiations. Zarathiel felt her stomach tighten. Real diplomacy was completely different from academy exercises. There were no reset buttons if things went wrong. Partnership assignments for the mission are as follows, the dean announced, and a holographic list appeared above them. Zarathiel quickly found her name paired with Marcus, as usual. But unlike their normal practice sessions, this time they were assigned to the most dangerous delegation, the one going directly to the contested mining asteroid where tensions were highest. 3 hours later, they found themselves aboard a diplomatic shuttle heading toward Kepler 442. The shuttle also carried Ambassador Thrain, an experienced Talarian diplomat, and Dr. Sarah Martinez, a human expert in interspecies conflict resolution. "Tell me what you know about the situation," Ambassador Thrain said to Marcus and Zarathiel as they traveled through hyperspace. Marcus consulted his datapad. The Rockborn discovered the asteroid first, but they're slow miners. The Veil Dancers moved in with faster extraction technology and started taking minerals from areas the Rockborn considered theirs. "The legal situation is complicated," Zarathiel added. "The asteroid is in neutral space, so both species have valid claims under different parts of galactic law." "Exactly," Dr. Martinez said. "The Rockborn are claiming first discovery rights. The Veil Dancers are claiming efficiency-based mining rights. Both have legal precedent. So this isn't really about law," Marcus said thoughtfully. "It's about something else." Ambassador Thrain nodded approvingly. "What do you think it's really about?" Marcus and Zarathiel exchanged glances. Over the past months, they had learned to work together, reading each other's thoughts with increasing ease. "Respect," Zarathiel said slowly. "The Rockborn are a proud species. Having faster miners take their discovery makes them look weak." "And the Veil Dancers are nomads," Marcus added. "They don't understand the Rockborn concept of territory because they never stay in one place long enough to form attachments to. Locations." "Very good," Dr. Martinez said. "So how would you approach this?" Before either could answer, the shuttle shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through the viewport, they could see the contested asteroid surrounded by ships from both species. The Rockborn vessels were large and heavily armored, built like floating fortresses. The Veil Dancer ships were sleek and fast, designed for quick movement. "They're not shooting at each other yet," Ambassador Thrain observed. "That's something." The shuttle docked at a neutral station built into the asteroid's surface. As they disembarked, Zarathiel could feel the tension in the air. Rockborn miners, who looked like walking boulders with glowing crystal eyes, moved slowly through the corridors. Veil Dancers, tall and graceful with skin that seemed to shimmer like water, glided past them with fluid movements. Neither group was talking to the other. The negotiation room was divided down the middle. Rockborn representatives sat on one side, their massive forms making the reinforced chairs creak. Veil Dancer delegates occupied the other side, their bodies in constant, subtle motion even while seated. "Honored delegates," Ambassador Thrain began formally, "we are here to find a solution that respects both your people's needs and rights." The Rockborn leader, whose name translated to "Stone Who Remembers," spoke in a voice like grinding granite. "They came to our asteroid. They take our minerals. There is nothing to discuss." The Veil Dancer spokesperson, called Current Flowing Swift, responded with graceful hand gestures that accompanied her musical voice. "The asteroid sleeps unused while the galaxy needs its gifts. We wake it to purpose." For 2 hours, the formal negotiations went nowhere. Each side repeated their positions using diplomatic language, but no one was actually listening to anyone else. Zarathiel watched Ambassador Thrain and Dr. Martinez growing more frustrated with each failed exchange. During a break, Marcus pulled Zarathiel aside. "This isn't working," he said quietly. "They're not really angry about mining rights." "What do you mean?" "Look at their body language. The Rockborn keep talking about their asteroid like it's a person. And the veil dancers keep using words about sleeping and waking. Zarathiel studied both groups more carefully. Marcus was right. There was something deeper happening here. The rock-born form emotional connections to places, she realized. To them, the asteroid isn't just a resource. It's special. And the veil dancers see unused resources as wasteful, Marcus added. They think they're helping by making the asteroid productive. So the rock-born feel like someone moved into their home without asking, and the veil dancers think they're doing a good deed by cleaning up an abandoned property. When negotiations resumed, Ambassador Thrain tried a different approach, but it quickly devolved into the same arguments. That's when Marcus did something that made Zarathiel's heart race with anxiety and pride at the same time. He stood up. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the room. "May I ask both groups a question?" Ambassador Thrain looked surprised but nodded. Marcus turned to Stone. "Who remembers first? When your people discovered this asteroid, what did it mean to you? Not legally, but personally?" The massive rock-born was quiet for a long moment, his crystal eyes dimming slightly. "It sang to us. The minerals hummed with harmonies we had not heard in centuries. We named it Hope-Bearer because its songs reminded us of our lost homeworld." Zarathiel saw several veil dancers straighten in surprise. They hadn't known the asteroid had a name, or that it held emotional significance. Marcus then turned to current flowing swift. "And when your people came here, what did you see?" "We saw beauty sleeping unused," she replied, her shimmering skin rippling with emotion. "The asteroid's songs were trapped, waiting to be shared with the galaxy. We thought we were setting them free." The room fell silent. For the first time, both sides understood what the conflict was really about. "You both hear the asteroid's songs," Zarathiel said softly, standing beside Marcus. "You both care about it. The question isn't who has the right to be here. The question is how two peoples who both love the same place can share it." Stone, who remembers, and Current Flowing Swift looked at each other for the first time since negotiations began. "Perhaps," Stone, who remembers, said slowly, "there is wisdom in working together." As the two species began talking about partnership, rather than territorial rights, Zarathiel felt Marcus's hand briefly touch hers under the table. In that moment, she realized that what they had built together over the past months wasn't just effective diplomacy. It was something much deeper and much more dangerous for a princess who was expected to marry within her own species. But as she watched two peoples who had been ready for war begin planning a shared future, she couldn't bring herself to care about the rules anymore. The success at the mining negotiations had made Marcus and Zarathiel heroes at the academy. Other students looked at them with new respect, and professors praised their innovative approach to diplomacy. But with only 2 months left before graduation, both of them were beginning to realize that their partnership meant more to them than just academic achievement. It was during a quiet evening in the Academy's observation deck that everything changed. They sat together watching the stars, sharing stories about their childhood homes. Zarathiel was telling Marcus about the crystal gardens of her father's palace when she suddenly stopped speaking. "What is it?" Marcus asked, noticing her distant expression. "I received a message from my father today," she said softly. "He has arranged my marriage to Prince Velcorin of the Northern Territories. The ceremony is scheduled for 1 month after I return home." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Arranged marriage? But what about what you want?" Zarathiel's silver eyes reflected the starlight. "What I want has never been part of the equation. Royal marriages are about alliance building and bloodline preservation. Personal feelings are considered irrelevant." "That's not fair," Marcus said, his voice carrying more emotion than he intended. "Fair?" Zarathiel turned to look at him. "Marcus, I am the crown princess of an empire that spans 40 star systems. Fair has nothing to do with my life. They sat in silence for several minutes, both understanding that something important was happening between them, but neither knowing how to name it. What if you said no? Marcus asked finally. I cannot. It would bring shame to my family and could damage important political alliances. But what if you could? What if you had a choice? Zarathiel looked at him with an expression he had never seen before, vulnerable and hopeful and terrified all at once. If I had a choice, I would choose to stay here, with you. The words hung in the space between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Zara, Marcus said quietly, using her shortened name for the first time. I think I'm falling in love with you. She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them, there were tears on her blue-tinted cheeks. I know I am falling in love with you, but loving you feels like choosing to break my entire world apart. Over the following weeks, they began meeting in secret. They would slip away to empty classrooms or quiet corners of the garden, stealing moments to talk about dreams they had never shared with anyone else. Marcus told her about his hope to help establish peaceful relations between species that had never trusted each other before. Zarathiel spoke about her vision of transforming the Velnari Empire from a rigid hierarchy into something more flexible and welcoming. We could do so much together, she said one evening as they walked through the garden under 2 different moons. Your people's adaptability combined with my people's knowledge and resources, we could change how the entire galaxy approaches diplomacy. Then let's do it, Marcus said, taking her hand. Come to Earth with me. Request asylum. We can build something new together. It's not that simple, Zarathiel replied, though she didn't pull her hand away. If I abandon my duties, it could destabilize the entire empire. And your Earth government might not welcome a Velnari princess who has caused a diplomatic incident. But even as she spoke, Marcus could see the hope growing in her eyes. Their secret meetings became more frequent and more dangerous. They would talk until late into the night about the future they might build together. Marcus would describe Earth's farming colonies where cooperation was more important than hierarchy. Zarathiel would share her knowledge of galactic politics and the complex web of alliances that kept peace between the stars. They were so focused on each other that they failed to notice they were being watched. Commander Veltar, Zarathiel's personal guard, had suspected something when the princess began requesting more study time and seemed happier than she had ever been. A few careful surveillance devices confirmed his worst fears. The recording he sent back to Emperor Xanthiel showed Princess Zarathiel and Marcus Chen holding hands in the garden, talking about spending their lives together. The response from the Velnari homeworld was swift and harsh. Zarathiel was in her room packing for what she thought would be another secret meeting with Marcus when Commander Veltar entered without permission. Your Highness, he said formally, by order of Emperor Xanthiel, you are to return to Velnar immediately. Your association with the human Marcus Chen is to end completely. Zarathiel felt the blood drain from her face. You've been spying on me. It is my duty to protect you, Your Highness, including from your own poor judgment. Poor judgment? Zarathiel's voice rose with anger she had never allowed herself to show before. Marcus is the best person I have ever known. He is kind and intelligent, and he sees possibilities where others see only problems. He is human, Commander Veltar replied, as if that explained everything. And you are the crown princess of the Velnari Empire. This association ends now. Meanwhile, Marcus was receiving his own unwelcome news. Ambassador Patricia Wong from Earth's diplomatic corps sat across from him in Dean Korthax's office, her expression serious. Mr. Chen, she said, we understand you have formed an attachment to Princess Zarathiel. We're partners in the diplomatic program, Marcus replied carefully. We both know it's more than that, Ambassador Wong said. And while your personal feelings are your own business, the diplomatic implications are not. The Velnari Empire is one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Earth cannot afford to anger them over a romantic relationship. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. So what are you saying? You're being reassigned. There's a new colony in the Tau Ceti system that needs an experienced diplomat. You leave tomorrow. And if I refuse? Ambassador Wong's expression softened slightly. Marcus, you're a good diplomat with a bright future. Don't throw it all away for something that can never work. The princess has duties to her people just as you have duties to yours. That night, Marcus managed to send one encrypted message to Zarathiel. Meet me at the garden. We need to talk. She came, slipping away from her guards one last time. When she saw his face, she knew immediately that their secret was out. They're sending me away, Marcus said without preamble. Tomorrow. Morning? And they're taking me back to Velnar tonight, Zarathiel replied, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. The wedding has been moved up. I am to marry Prince Velkorin in 2 weeks. They stood facing each other in the garden where they had shared so many dreams, both knowing this might be the last time they would ever be alone together. Run away. With me, Marcus said desperately. Right now. We can take a shuttle to neutral space, figure out the rest later. For a moment, Zarathiel's face showed that she was actually considering it. Then reality crashed back down on her. If I disappear, my father will assume I've been kidnapped. He might declare war on Earth, thinking your government took me. I can't be responsible for starting a conflict that could kill millions. Then what do we do? Zarathiel reached out and touched his face gently. We remember that love sometimes means letting go. That's not fair, Marcus said, echoing his words from weeks before. No, she agreed. It's not. They held each other in the garden under the alien stars, both knowing that in a few hours they would be separated by a distance measured not just in light years, but in the unbridgeable gap between their two worlds. Neither of them knew that this would not be the end of their story, but only the end of the beginning. 2 years had passed since Marcus Chen last saw Princess Zarathiel in the garden of the Galactic Diplomatic Academy. 2 years of throwing himself into his work on the frontier colonies, helping settle disputes between species that had never learned to trust each other. His colleagues often remarked that he seemed driven by something deeper than career ambition, though he never spoke about what that might be. Marcus had become one of Earth's most successful frontier diplomats, using the techniques he had developed, with Zarathiel to build bridges between species that everyone else thought were too different to cooperate. He had helped establish 3 new peaceful trade alliances and prevented 2 potential wars. But late at night, alone in his quarters on distant colony worlds, he still found himself wondering what had happened to the Velnari princess, who had changed his understanding of the galaxy. He was on the colony world of New Terra, mediating a dispute between human settlers and native crystal creatures when he received an urgent message from Earth's diplomatic corps. All senior diplomats are to report to the Galactic Council emergency session on Nexus Prime immediately. The message. Read. Crisis level, maximum, transport leaves in 6 hours. Marcus packed quickly, his mind racing through possibilities. Maximum crisis level meant something that could affect the stability of the entire galaxy. As his ship jumped to hyperspace toward HFY Nexus Prime, he tried to imagine what could be serious enough to call every major diplomat in known space to an emergency session. When he arrived at the Galactic Council building, he found chaos. Representatives from dozens of species filled the corridors, all talking in urgent whispers. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Marcus," called a familiar voice. He turned to see Dr. Sarah Martinez, who had been with them during the mining crisis 2 years ago. She looked worried and excited at the same time. "Sarah, what's going on?" Marcus asked as they walked toward the main assembly hall. "No one knows for sure," she replied. "But there are rumors that..." The Velnari Empire is about to make some kind of major announcement, something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat at the mention of the Velnari, but he forced himself to stay calm. What kind of announcement? That's just it. Nobody knows. The Velnari delegation requested this emergency session, but they won't say what. It's about until everyone is here. As they entered the massive assembly hall, Marcus looked around at the gathered representatives. He had been to council sessions before, but never one where every single member species had sent their highest-ranking diplomats. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than anything he had experienced. The hall fell silent as the Velnari delegation entered. Marcus expected to see the usual group of elderly male nobles in their traditional robes. Instead, his breath caught in his throat. Leading the delegation was Princess Zarathiel. She looked different than he remembered. Her bearing was more confident, more regal, but there was also something softer about her expression. She wore flowing robes of deep blue that seemed to shimmer with their own light, and her silver hair was arranged in an elaborate style that marked her as speaking for the entire empire. But what shocked Marcus most was the small figure walking beside her, holding her hand. It was a child, perhaps 3 years old, with features that were clearly a blend of human and Velnari characteristics. The child had Zarathiel's silver eyes and delicate bone structure, but the darker skin tone and softer features that could only have come from human heritage. Marcus felt the world tilt around him as understanding crashed over him like a wave. Zarathiel took her place at the speaker's podium, her child sitting in a special chair beside her. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the silent hall. "Honored delegates," she began, "I stand before you today not just as Princess Zarathiel of the Velnari Empire, but as the mother of Kira Chen Velnari, the first known hybrid child of human and Velnari heritage." Gasps and shocked murmurs echoed through the hall. Hybrid children between species so genetically different were supposed to be impossible. Yet here was living proof that the impossible had happened. For too long, Zarathiel continued, our species have remained separate, believing that our differences made cooperation impossible. But my daughter is proof that when different peoples come together with understanding and respect, we can create something entirely new. Something stronger than either parent species alone. Marcus found himself standing without realizing it, his eyes locked on Zarathiel's face. Across the vast hall, she saw him and smiled. The same warm smile he remembered from their nights in the Academy Garden. "I propose a new model for galactic civilization," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Not the old system where stronger species dominate weaker ones, but a new approach based on adaptive cooperation. We must learn to combine our different strengths rather than letting our differences divide us." An elderly Talarian delegate stood up. "Your Highness, while your child is certainly remarkable, how does this change practical diplomatic relations? The old treaties and power structures have maintained peace for centuries." Zarathiel's expression grew serious. "Because those old structures are failing. In the past 2 years, the Velnari Empire has lost 3 major alliances because our rigid diplomatic approach could not adapt to changing circumstances. Meanwhile, species that embrace flexibility and cooperation, like humanity, are forming new partnerships that we cannot access." She gestured toward Marcus, and he felt every eye in the hall turn toward him. "I learned this lesson from Marcus Chen, whose innovative diplomatic methods have established more successful peaceful alliances in 2 years than traditional Velnari diplomacy has achieved in the past decade." Marcus felt his face burn with embarrassment and pride as murmurs spread through the assembly. "Therefore," Zarathiel announced, "the Velnari Empire formally requests to establish a new type of diplomatic alliance with Earth, one based on shared learning rather than traditional power structures. And we propose that this new alliance be symbolized by the appointment of joint ambassadors who can bridge the gap between our peoples." The hall erupted in discussion as delegates realized what she was suggesting. A formal alliance between the ancient Velnari Empire and the young human civilization could shift the balance of power throughout the galaxy. After hours of debate and discussion, the council voted to support the new alliance structure. As delegates began filing out to prepare detailed negotiations, Marcus found himself walking toward the Velnari section, his heart pounding. Zarathiel was waiting for him, their daughter playing with a small holographic toy at her feet. "Hello, Marcus," she said softly. "Hello, Zara." He looked down at the child, their child, and felt overwhelming emotion threaten to knock him over. "She's beautiful. She is also brilliant and stubborn and asks questions about everything," Zarathiel said with a laugh. "Very much like her father." "How?" Marcus asked. "How did you manage all of this?" Zarathiel's smile grew sad for a moment. "It wasn't easy. When I discovered I was pregnant, I realized I had a choice. I could hide it and live the life my father planned for me, or I could use our daughter as proof that the galaxy could be different, better." "And your father? The arranged marriage?" Prince Velkorin proved to be more understanding than expected. "When I explained that I carried a child who could represent the future of interspecies cooperation, he agreed that my duty lay in a different direction." She paused. "It also helped that my pregnancy made it impossible to hide that I had been in love with someone else." Marcus knelt down to be at eye level with his daughter. "Hello, Kira. I'm your father." The little girl looked at him with serious silver eyes. "Mama said you help people talk to each other when they don't understand." "I try," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "Can you teach me?" Marcus looked up at Zarathiel, seeing his own hope reflected in her face. "I think your mother and I can teach you together." As the three of them walked out of the council building into the orange sunset of Nexus Prime, Marcus realized that what had started as a jest, pairing a proud alien princess with a simple human diplomat, had created something that no one had expected. They had created a new future for the galaxy, one conversation at a time. And sometimes, Marcus thought as he watched his daughter run ahead of them, laughing in the universal language of childhood joy, the most impossible things turn out to be exactly what the universe needed all along.